Mary Bloodsworth was a woman who lived in the year 1750 in rural southeast Minnesota. She lived deep in the forest in a tiny cottage and sold herbal remedies for a living. Villagers in the town nearby were amazed at how her herbal remedies healed sick people so quickly. One day, a man who lived in the village for many years and was never able to walk received a potion from her. The very next day, he was not only able to walk, but began dancing all around the town in the most peculiar manner. His personality had changed so completely that his own family didn't even know him anymore. People began to say that she was a witch. Mary was a very beautiful woman, and most of the men were enchanted with her. At the same time, all of the women in the village were very jealous of Mary. Many of them acted cruelly towards her and taunted her. They told her that she was ugly, that she would never marry, and that she would never bear any children. Young girls in the village soon began to disappear, one by one. No one could find out where they had gone. Grief-stricken families searched the woods, the local stores, and all of the houses and barns, but there was no sign of the missing girls. A few brave souls even went to Mary's home in the woods to see if she had taken the girls, but she denied any knowledge of the disappearances. One of the village men had been seen several times at Mary's house. The neighbors were suspicious at first and wondered why he had visited so many times. He told everyone that he was going there to hopefully trick Mary into telling them where she had hid the children. But in the end, no one could prove that Mary had ever taken the girls. Then one night, the daughter of the town blacksmith, mysteriously and without warning, arose from her bed and walked outside. As she walked slowly from her house, she appeared to be in a trance, following an enchanted sound that no one else could hear. The blacksmith's wife heard her daughter leaving the house, and she yelled for her husband to come quickly. The blacksmith came running in his nightshirt and tried to restrain the girl, but she kept breaking away with an unworldly strength and began heading into the woods. The desperate cries of the blacksmith and his wife woke the villagers, and they rushed to help the frantic couple. Suddenly, a farmer yelled out and pointed out to a strange glowing light at the edge of the woods. A few townsmen followed him into a clearing and found Mary standing beside a large tree, pointing her finger towards the blacksmith's house. Her whole body was glowing with a weird, smoky, yellowish-green light. As she was heard mumbling strange, inaudible words upon the blacksmith's daughter. The townspeople grabbed their pitchforks and chased after Mary. When she heard the voice, she broke off her spell and fled back into the woods. In the distance, they could see Mary running into her cottage and slam the door. Within moments, the villagers reached the cabin and broke the door down, but Mary was nowhere to be seen. The men then rushed around to the back of the cottage and turned their lanterns toward the forest behind them. She had vanished without a trace. After 6 months later, one day they noticed Mary carrying a newborn baby. Shocked at the very sight of this abomination, and knowing that the baby was conceived out of wedlock, the villagers began spreading rumors that her baby was the spawn of the devil, and therefore sentenced her and the baby to death. After the townsfolk murdered her newborn baby, they proceeded to slash Mary with shards of glass as she watched in a mirror until she was dead. As she lay there bleeding to death in agony, she began clawing at their faces and cursing the villagers as well as the ground on which they walked. On her last breath, she cried out with a horribly disgusting, unearthly sound and vowed to come back from the grave to kill each and every one of them in the most terrible manner possible. The villagers say that her soul was sucked into the mirror that day, and there she remains in torment for all eternity. From that day on, she was known as Bloody Mary. 300 years later, in 2015, two young girls named Karina and Julia were on a walk one day in late October through the nearby forest where they lived. They suddenly came across a very old cottage standing in the middle of a clearing. Very odd, they thought. They had walked past this clearing at least 100 times before, and never had they noticed a little strange cottage standing there. They had heard of the legend of Bloody Mary in those parts, and immediately thought this might be the very cottage that Mary lived. But why had they never seen it until now? When they went inside, they found a mirror standing in the middle of a darkly lit room, with a small table beside it and a large brown candle sitting on top. They had heard the story from kids at school, but thought it was just a silly old legend made up to frighten people. However, they were curious and decided they would try summoning Mary just for kicks and giggles. As legend would have it, if you light a candle, stand in front of a mirror, and chant her name 10 times without interruption, her ghost will appear in the mirror and slash your face to shreds. Karina, being the trickster that she was, dared Julia to light the candle and stand in front of the mirror. The room was suddenly lit in a strangely eerie way, as if they had entered a different dimension. As the flame crackled and flickered, it made little shadows dance across the room as their eyes became more used to the yellow-orange light. Their imagination started to play tricks on them, and they thought they could even make the shadows out to be little dancers. Julia suddenly felt a mysterious sense of calm over her entire body, and an irresistible urge to start slowly chanting the words, "Bloody Mary, Bloody Mary, Bloody Mary." Then without notice, she caught herself and snapped out of it. "I can't do this," she said. "This is getting really creepy." "Come on, Julia," said Karina. "According to the legend, her name must be chanted 10 times without a break, and on the 10th time, Bloody Mary will suddenly appear in the mirror. What if the legend was really true? I have to see." "But she is said to be a vicious, vengeful ghost and will violently try to slash your face to shreds. And even if by chance you manage to escape, she's supposed to haunt you every time you're in front of a mirror, and she will never stop trying to kill you," said Julia. "Ha!" chided Karina. "You really believe that tired old tale? You're supposed to be the older, wiser one here. You're 12 and I'm 8. I should be the one who's scared. And here you are carrying on like a little baby." "All right, I'll do it, just to satisfy your curiosity and finally shut you up," said Julia. "But don't say I didn't warn you if something really bad happens." Then Julia started to chant her name again. Slowly she uttered the words as she gazed into the mirror, almost in a trance. "Bloody Mary, Bloody Mary, Bloody Mary." She chanted the name 3 times, then 6 times, then 9 times. She was getting really nervous now. One more time, and the ghost might appear. But that was impossible. It was only a story, right? "Get a hold of yourself, Julia," she thought to herself. "Just get it over with." She started to tremble, and her voice quivered as she spoke the name one more time. "Bloody Mary." There, it was done. Whew, what a relief. Now they could leave and get out of that creepy old cottage. "That Karina thinks she's so smart and brave," she thought. "Well, I did it. I chanted the name all 10 times without a break, and nothing happened. Phooey on her." Julia started to speak. "Karina, put that candle out now and let's go. Mom will be wondering where the heck we are, and if we're late for supper, I'm going to tell her it was all your fault." But just as they were about to take off, they heard a muffled hiss in the back corner of the dark room. A sound as if someone were gasping for air. Then a scratch, and another scratch, as if someone were trying to claw their way out of a small space. Trying to claw their way out of a small space? Julia and Karina stared at each other with wide, frightful eyes, with beads of sweat rolling down their temples, and their knees trembling with fear. With Julia's back turned away from the mirror, Karina began to notice something moving slowly. In the upper left corner of the dirty, stained glass, she saw a dark, ominous figure starting to take shape. As she watched it form into an object, her eyes got wider and wider, and her mouth dropped open as she began to make little squeaking noises in terror. "What are you looking at, Karina?" stammered Julia, as she slowly turned around to witness the horrific sight. As the dark figure began to take shape, they first noticed a face encased within long strands of coal-black, mangled hair. then eyes as piercing and white as birch bark. And then they saw the mouth distorted into a horrible disfigured form. The figure became clear and defined in the fading, flickering candlelight. And then they saw the terrible bloody gashes strewn all over her face. Before they knew it, a gruesome black hand with long, heavy claws came rushing out of the mirror, aiming straight for Julia's face. Luckily, Karina saw the hand coming and quickly pushed Julia out of the way as hard as she could, where she hit the wall with her shoulder and fell to the floor. As Julia was pushed away in time, the disgusting sharp claws caught Karina by the collar of her jacket and sliced a hole right through the fabric. Pinned down by the horrible figure at the moment, Karina screamed at a pitch so loud it vibrated the mirror frame and almost shattered the glass. With Mary temporarily caught off guard by the ear-splitting scream, Julia then sprang to her feet, rushed over to help Karina, and grabbed Karina by the hand, yanked her out of the ghastly figure's grip, and they both raced out the door as fast as their legs could carry them, and didn't stop until they reached home. Finally at home and safe, they crumbled into a heap on the front porch of their house, exhausted and gasping for air, and looking at each other in pure amazement at their escape. Years later, they still remember the terrifying night, as if it were yesterday when they summoned Bloody Mary in the little cottage, and they always shudder in fear and dread to think what could have happened. To this day, neither one of them stand in front of a mirror longer than a few seconds to brush their hair before school in the morning. They will never know how many people had chanted Mary's name before the darkened mirror in the last 300 years, or how many people were actually captured or killed by the ghostly terror, all because they found it curious to see if the legend was actually true. Well, Julia and Karina now know that it is indeed true. They vowed never to tell anyone about it, and they will never forget it.